Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening to the April 2014 Abingdon Town Council regular session. A couple of things that I would note before we begin tonight, one of which is that each month our council receives a substantial package of materials to help us prepare for consideration of the issues that will be brought before us each night. I would note that on the table to my left, under the photographs there is copies of those documents that I'm referencing. If you care to look at them, you're more than welcome to see the documents that, again, we use to prepare ourselves for each meeting. Also, I would request that this evening, if you have any cell phones, anything like that with you, you turn them off or to stun, as we're prone to say around here, so we won't disrupt the nature of the meeting. I would also point out that during the course of this meeting, we're going to have tonight several public hearings where the public will have an opportunity to address specific issues that will be before our consideration tonight. And then at the end of the meeting, we will have a session that is for items that are not on the agenda, and if there are topics that folks wish to make known to us, they'll be able to come forward at that time to talk with us. It is a thin crowd that we have this evening, and I think there's probably some rumor of a basketball game or something like that tonight. But that being said, we have hopefully an agenda that will move along well this evening. I will ask our clerk, Cecile Rosenbaum, if she will call the roll, please.
Mrs. Juring. Here. Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Humphreys.
Here.
Mrs. Lowe.
Here.
And Mayor Morgan.
Here.
And let the record reflect that all 5 council members are present.
Thank you. And I believe Council Member Rick Humphreys has volunteered to lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance this evening.
If everyone will stand and please pledge allegiance to our flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would note before we proceed a little earlier that we're pleased to have some guests with us this evening. Mr. Wallace, would you care to introduce the folks you have tonight and tell us about these folks that you've shanghaied into coming here this evening?
It's my pleasure. These are students from Emory and Henry College. They're in a course called Politics and Public Policy. So we thought we'd take the opportunity to let them actually see government in action rather than just talk about it. So,
very good. We're pleased to have you come see us make the sausage. And all righty. And I would note that on this table here tonight, I'm an Emory and Henry alumnus, as is our Vice Mayor Kathy Lowe, and Greg Kelly, our town manager, and I believe I see our assistant town manager and town planner Garrett Jackson there. And you know, they say that if you go to Emory, the college tells the parents that if you send your kids to Emory and Henry, they will go far, but they never expected that they would go to Russia, where Mr. Jackson was very recently. You'll have to tell us about it before we proceed. Come on, give us about a minute and a half.
You didn't see that
rundown on this. Well, that's all right. It keeps it on this.
Well, I hope my voice holds up. I was invited by the United States Department of State on a Fulbright scholarship to attend a conference in Russia 2 days, 2 weeks ago, as well as meet with city leaders in Magnitogorsk, Chelyabinsk, and 2 small settlement towns about municipal management in the United States as well as urban planning. And it was a terrific experience. You may have seen the picture holding the Emory and Henry pennant in front of St. Basil's Cathedral in Red Square. So it was a terrific experience, and they were extremely confused as to why we would hire city managers without regard to political persuasion, and I couldn't get them to understand. Couldn't get them to understand that ethically we're bound not to be a member of a party or participate in politics, and that's unheard of to them because it's very corrupt there. So, but it was a great experience, and I appreciate you all allowing me to go.
And what was the primary thing you went to talk about?
Municipal management and urban planning.
And I heard the Creeper Trail.
Creeper Trail and the Over Mountain Victory Trail were actually two well-received topics. So.
Oh, very good. So we taught them something about making lemonade out of lemons.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very good. Well, we're very proud that you got to make that trip. It reflects well on you, and I have to say on us too. And you know, and I must confess, I'm very envious.
You all gave me a lot to talk about. So.
Well.
No corruption, though.
All right, thank you very much. All righty.
Mr. Mayor, I can assure you what happened in Russia stayed in Russia.
All right, and that's as it should be. All right, Mr. Kelly, we have another sort of pleasurable part of our meeting tonight, the recognition or special employee acknowledgements. Would you care to take that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, both of the individuals who are to be recognized tonight are not present, but I will go ahead and mention them. I do know that Pat Mason is in the Master Gardeners program, and her class meets tonight, so she's unable to be here. We're here to recognize Thad Finney, who is a foreman at the town's Department of Public Works. And he's been with the town of Abingdon for 10 years. And I would also point out to the council and the members of the public that in his spare time, Thad is a blacksmith of trades. And when I went to England a year or so ago, he made that knife that we were able to present to my counterpart in Abingdon, England. So I wish Thad could have been here tonight, but congratulations to Thad on 10 years, and also Pat Mason. And a lot of people will recall seeing Pat in our horticulture department for the past 10 years. She's always out working on the streets and the mulch beds and in the flower gardens that we have throughout town, and does an excellent job of keeping the town looking good. So even in their absence, I'd ask you all to join me in some applause for these two.
All right. Well, we're very appreciative of their service and you know, all they have done and continue to do for our community, and we look forward to their continued employment with our town and future contributions. Council, we have several sets of minutes tonight for our consideration. We have the March 3rd, 2014 work session meeting, the regular meeting minutes of that same date. We have the budget work session meeting minutes from March the 24th, 2014. Also budget work session meeting minutes from the 26th of March, as well as work session meetings from the 27th of March 2014. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be noted to these minutes? Hearing none, what's your pleasure about this, please?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve all 5 sets of minutes.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and second to approve all 5 sets of minutes as presented. Hearing no further discussion, Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mrs. Deering. Aye. Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Thank you. Next item is a series of public hearings that we have for our consideration. The first is a public hearing and perhaps an action on the first reading, a consideration of a lease agreement by and between Norfolk Southern Railway Company and the town of Abingdon. Ms. Eisenhower, our town attorney, is here to address us on that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Honorable Council, this matter concerns a lease of the parking area that we've been using for some time that is located across Green Spring Road near the Virginia Creeper Engine and the trailhead. It's important that we have this area for parking for users, bikers, hikers, and walkers on the Virginia Creeper Trail so that they can easily gain access to the area. Another company had the area under lease for some number of years and had simply allowed the public to use it, but has since, the lease has since lapsed, and we've been in touch with Norfolk Southern and have this lease for your consideration. 0.25 acres of real property is the nature of the area that we're talking about, with a gravel surface suitable for parking automobiles. The company has worked with us, Norfolk Southern, in waiving partial fees, application fees. The annual lease, the annual fee will be $300, and will be on a yearly basis increased with regard to CPI or price index, which when I spoke with Mr. Greg Huffman at the Roanoke office, he said this would probably be for us somewhere in the 3% range, which is about $9 for next year, and waive an increase. The town is required to furnish a certificate of insurance for liability. We've already secured that. And the town is responsible for maintaining property in a condition at least as good as it found same, which means a gravel driveway sort of thing. And it is a rather comprehensive lease in essence general fashion, but they've waived some of the standard requirements.
Okay, and it would be your recommendation that we enter into that lease?
It would.
It certainly sounds like the price is reasonable.
We also do have to pay the tax each year on this property, is that, do we have to?
We have the tax responsibility.
For this?
Okay, all right, very good. All righty, thank you. We are required by the state of Virginia, anytime we enter into a lease of this sort, to have a public hearing on this particular topic. And at this time, I will declare the public hearing to be open regarding this lease. And if there is anyone here who wishes to address the town council tonight regarding this matter, they may come forward at the present time. Again, if there is anyone who wishes to address the council regarding this matter, this is your opportunity. There does not appear to be anyone who wishes to address the council on this matter. I will therefore declare the public hearing to be closed. And council, what is your preference on this matter? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the recommendation of the town attorney and enter the lease agreement between Norfolk Southern Railroad Company and the town of Abingdon.
Okay, is there a second? We have a motion and a second to enter into the lease as presented to us and on the recommendation of our town attorney. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, within that motion needs to be authorization of me to execute the lease.
And I would add that I would like to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement.
And is there a second? And I would ask, is it necessary for us to have a second reading on this, Mr. Kelly?
No.
Okay, if that is the case, I'll bet your motion might even include dispensing.
Includes dispensing with second reading.
No, we're making headway here. All right, we have that amendment and a second to that amendment. Any further discussion?
Well, the only thing I would like to say, just to discuss this, is I was really hoping that Norfolk and Southern, and maybe they will in the future, would see fit to deed this land to the town for their continual use instead of being on a rental basis.
I think that would be well worth our town council, or excuse me, our town manager entering into discussions with them and see if that might be possible in the future.
I think so. Maybe 10 years down the road we'll have it.
All right. If not sooner.
That's the last one that we did, if you'll recall. It took a long time.
They have been known to be slow.
The railway is fairly aware that we're interested in that
All right.
development.
Very good. All righty. Any further discussion? Mr. Rosenbaum, if you call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering. Aye. Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morton.
Aye. Next item is also for an item on consideration for the first reading. An ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, to vacate an unopened right-of-way formerly known as Johnson Street, also known as John Stunn Street, and bounded by 3 parcels of land currently owned by KVAT Food Stores Incorporated in Abingdon. Ms. Eisenhower, if you'd enlighten us on this, please.
If you would, first of all, look towards your new and improved heading on the ordinance that you were given this evening is to vacate an unopened right-of-way formerly known as Mountain View Street and lying perpendicular to Jackson and Johnson Streets.
And I'll bet any motion that we make probably needs to reflect the appropriate topic.
That would be very advisable.
All right.
And as you said earlier, it's to vacate an unopened right-of-way formerly known as Mountain View Street. The proposed vacation of the right-of-way was requested by KVAT and advertised per the code November 18th and 25th of this past year. All interested parties were notified. At the December 7th meeting of council, a board of viewers was appointed to conduct their inspection and make a recommendation. They did so and submitted a report on December 20th, recommending that the right-of-way be closed as all 3 parcels of real property adjoining it were the property of KVAT. Council voted unanimously to do so on January 6th at the public hearing. Plat has now been prepared, the ordinance has been written, and will be filed among the records in the court.
All righty.
Recommendation of the legal department is to accept that.
All right, and again, this is a matter that we had approved earlier on, as you noted, through first considering the request, then having the
Exactly.
viewers do it, and then we've taken an action on it, and now we're making it official. Is that fair?
Exactly, but I do believe this one pertains to real estate and would require second reading.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, that being said, we are also required to have a public hearing on this, excuse me.
We've already had that, Mr. Mayor,
That was
a
last
few months ago.
January 6th, sir.
All righty, well, it got stuck in the, okay, all right, thank you. All right, at this point in time, we have had our public hearing and the process that I was trying to summarize a minute ago, and there's not a need or a requirement, excuse me, that we have another one. So at this point in time, I'll entertain a motion regarding this matter.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor, that we accept the ordinance to vacate an unopened right-of-way formerly known as Mountain View Street and lying perpendicular to Jackson and Johnson Streets.
Very good.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to again, approve the vacation of these streets as described previously. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Ms. Rosenbaum, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye, thank you. All right, the next item is a public hearing, also for possible consideration on the first reading, a proposed amendment to repeal, amend, and reenact the Town of Abingdon zoning ordinance B2 General Business Zoning District to add single-family and multifamily as permitted use by right in such zone as section number 11-1-1 and on the tax map number 106A 11A. Mr. Jackson, tell us about this, please.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I'll actually begin it by telling you a quick funny story about Russia and zoning. I spoke at 3 universities, and one student asked at one point a question regarding zoning, and he said, I thought America was a democratic country, and I said, it is, and he said, well, how is zoning not communism? So I had to explain that a little bit, but the matter before you right now was heard before the Planning Commission at their March 30th meeting. That's not their regular meeting, but it was rescheduled because of the Town Council work sessions for the budget on the 24th. There was a public hearing held. Planning Commission did not hear any comments other than one from the applicant. The purpose of this is to amend the ordinance to allow, as the applicant requested, apartments and single-family dwellings, or multifamily dwellings and single-family dwellings in the B2 zone, which is our general business sort of corridor zone. After a little discussion, Mr. Kelly recommended that lofts be substituted for apartments, which fits with our comprehensive plan. Apartments was just really too broad, general, and just wide open. Loft apartments, though, fit with our infill study and our comprehensive plan. And the single-family dwelling units, we already have a great deal of single-family homes within that corridor, so it fit with that. One example of what we're trying to do here, the area of land from, let's say, Capos or Bella's down to St. John's Lutheran Church, the old former Scott Addition is the name of the subdivision. That property is zone business, but the deed restrictions on it only allow for residential use for the properties. So our zoning isn't coordinating with the deed restrictions. Not that we have to do that, but it puts a hardship on property owners who do want to build a house on the property, and their deed restriction allows them to do that. but yet our zoning doesn't allow them to do that. So this would allow some of those folks to subdivide off their property and build single-family housing. That's not the premise of the application, and it would be applied townwide with all the B2 zones, but that's a good example why this is a good move.
Let me ask a question about that. I was aware that the Scott Edition had deed restrictions, but how would home businesses, or would it affect their ability to have home businesses if they, I mean, would they still not be able to do that?
No, within the, ironically enough, within the B2 zone, it doesn't have those types of uses in terms of residential uses except for multifamily, but it does allow for home occupations. So with the home occupation, people could still have a single-family residence and yet run a business out of their home.
Even though the deed restriction in the Scott Edition is for it to be residential only?
Right. Yeah, that's where zoning doesn't really, the deed restriction doesn't really touch the zoning on that,
Mr. Jackson?
as long as the primary use is residential. Mhm.
And one other question I'd like to ask you, Mr. Jackson, is, you said that wasn't the primary premise of why this was drafted. What was the primary premise? What brought this to your attention?
The applicant, whose name escapes me right now, but owns about 20 acres of land off of Old 11 Drive, west of Lehigh, west of East Main Street. Oh, 11 Court, yes. So it's across the street from Burger King, Capo's, and all that, down by the Church of the Nazarene. And he wanted to, at first, build multifamily units, and he met with me and my staff, and we informed him that they couldn't do that because of the zoning. And then after going and looking at financing and some other things, he realized that a single-family dwelling was more conducive, several of them, and as well as the church had asked that they not put in multifamily housing because the traffic that would come down that small road down there. So he and his business partners are looking at single-family dwellings instead.
So is that the property that's behind the service station right there? There's like one of the old Campbell log homes?
Yes. Well, not that particular. It's down.
Beyond the right.
Yeah, it's down on the right, just across from the Church of the Nazarene, but not the cabin property. I know the property you're talking about. But down that road. Mhm.
All right, and again, it's the recommendation of the Planning Commission that we adopt this amendment.
With lofts and single-family dwellings instead of multifamily dwellings.
So the recommendation is to change that. Mr. Howard probably knows, he's on the planning commission.
Yes.
I'll let him do that.
Well, yeah, the motion, yeah, I'll go ahead.
Well, let's have a public hearing here first, and then we'll do that now. I screwed up the last time, but I'm on top of it now. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Jackson has presented for our consideration a recommendation from the Planning Commission that we amend our general business zoning to permit, for a variety of reasons, single-family dwellings and loft apartments in our general business district. We are required to have a public hearing as part of this process, and I would ask at this point in time if there was anyone present who wishes to address the council regarding this matter, that they come forward at the present time. Again, is there anyone who wishes to address the council? There does not appear to be anyone who wishes to address the town council at the present time regarding this matter. I will therefore declare the hearing to be closed, and now I will entertain a motion regarding this matter.
Okay, as council's representative on the planning commission, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve this ordinance as it's been presented tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance as presented tonight. Is there any further discussion? Okay, and Ms. Rosenbaum, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Duren? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. All right, that brings us to second reading of ordinances. Okay, and we have an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, to repeal, and amend Chapter 30, Part 2, Environment, Article 4, Erosion and Sediment Control, through Section 30-93 of the Code of the Ordinances, the Town of Abingdon, Virginia. And I see Mr. Jim Smith, our town engineer, and Ms. Deb Eisenhower here to bring us up to speed on this.
I'll just say a little bit of rhetoric up front, and then he can take the heavy questions. This is our second reading of this amendment to the Erosion and Sediment Control Ordinance, which shall expand, add to the scope, and specify the definitions found in the existing ordinance. And this will be to bring us into state compliance pursuant to the Virginia Erosion and Sediment Control Law, 62.1, 44.15, 54. And Mr. Jim Smith is happily going to field any of your questions and concerns.
I'll offer the first question, and it's just for everybody's clarification on the matter. You mentioned the requirement that this brings us into compliance with the state ordinance. And if I recall our many discussions on this, we are required to enact an ordinance, and it does need to meet certain minimum requirements as outlined by the state.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. We fall under the Virginia Stormwater Management Act and the Clean Water Act. And two components of those regulations include a erosion control program and a stormwater management program. And our existing erosion sediment control ordinance has been updated to comply with the existing regulations, and also the stormwater management ordinance does comply with the minimum requirements by the state. We have, since the first reading, on March the 24th, last month, our governor did sign Senate Bill 423, which made it necessary to update even the ordinance that was presented last month, and I believe you have a copy of those. And those updates have been highlighted in that, and they've been added to Section 30-100, 30-102, 30-107, 30-103, and the fees have been revised in order to comply with the state requirements in that also.
These were made available to us after your packets were sent.
Are there what I would describe as significant changes in this ordinance from what we've acted on in the first reading, or things of particular concern to y'all?
No. A couple of paragraphs, there's a lot of it highlighted, but there's only a few sentences have been corrected in order to include what was in the regulations, and most of the paragraphs, especially the large one that you see there, most of it was in prior or last month.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
You surely may.
And bounds to the simple question, Mr. Smith, is any citizen that's wanting to build a new house or do add-on, how will this affect them?
Anything less than 1 acre will not necessarily affect them. They fall under the current erosion sediment control laws. Anything that's 1 or more acres will come under the Stormwater Management Act. And
when you say above or 1 acre, do you mean disturbed ground?
Yes,
Okay.
disturbed, yes.
Okay.
Disturbed.
And we may be mixing two ordinances here. We're talking about both simultaneously. We have the E&S, the erosion and sediment control, first on your agenda. And then we do have the stormwater, which we already seem to be into, because they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and I remember.
And so as far as permit, and I guess what I'm trying to do is to be comfortable with, and everyone around be comfortable with exactly what's being enacted, and so they'll be also informed if we have a situation to where that if someone's going to build a house, then it necessarily wouldn't require them to get an additional permit if it was under 1 acre for their, or would it?
As we do now, and the law allows us to issue an agreement in lieu of a complete plan.
Yes, sir.
And we usually do that on a single-family residence.
Thanks. So pretty much it would not.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, other questions? All righty. Again, council, we have acted on this document very similar to this last month, and this would go into the second reading. And when would this ordinance become effective?
It would become effective on May 7th.
Okay. All right. Council, I'll entertain a motion regarding this matter.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve the ordinance to appeal, amend, chapter, and as amended, Chapter 30, Part 2, Environmental, Article 4, Erosion Sediment Control, Section 30-86 through Section 30-93 of the Code of the Ordinance of the Town of Abingdon.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to repeal and amend as previously noted. Is there any further discussion on this or any additional questions? I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering. Aye. Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Okay, and if y'all will just stay right where you are, we'll have the usual suspects with us. An ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, this is our next item. It is, again, an ordinance of the Council of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia, to establish and enact a stormwater management ordinance, Chapter 30, Article 5, Sections 30 through 100 through 120, to be included in the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Abingdon, Virginia. And again, Mr. Smith and Ms. Eisenhower, if y'all would care to enlighten us on this, please.
Again, this is the second reading of our new ordinance, which deals with the stormwater management. And I might add up front that being at LGA, Local Government Attorneys Association meeting last week, we were one of the few localities that had this accomplished. So I felt like we were ahead of the game. But we did get some changes back from DEQ and some suggestions. This is the one that had the changes. Not significant, but something that they needed to tweak. Mr. Smith can tell you how significant. But we are mandated to have this ordinance due to differences in demographics and population, changes in state and federal definitions, and expanded environmental regulations and requirements, which now qualifies the town as an MS4.
I just covered those a few minutes ago.
Works for me. All right.
I speak of both of them.
As you go, as you noted, they go hand in hand.
They do.
All right. Do we have any questions regarding this next item of these folks? Okay. That being said, I'll entertain a motion regarding the proposed amendments to the enactment of a stormwater management ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the ordinance as Stormwater Management Ordinance, Chapter 30, Article 4, Sections 30-100 through 30-120, as presented by Mr. Smith and Ms. Eisenhower.
Second, please.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to enact the ordinance that has been outlined to create a stormwater management program within the town of Abingdon, Virginia. Is there any further discussion or comments about this? I'll ask our clerk if she'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Hi. Thank you very much. I know this has been a major undertaking for you all over the last several months to pull this together, and it's appreciated, and it's nice to be a leader in this. And hopefully it'll have good benefits for our community as well. Mr. Dew, I see you coming up here. He knew that I was going to be calling on him. All right. Our next item is consideration of bids for a GVW dump truck for the town's street department. Tell us about it, Mr. Dew, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm here tonight to present the bid results from March 24th for a new dump truck for the street departments, 33,000-pound gross vehicle weight piece of equipment. I think you have the bid results in front of you. My recommendation is to go with the truck that was submitted from Good Pasture Motor Company of Bristol, Virginia. The amount for the truck is $86,380. It is a budgeted item, and we do have enough money left in that budget item to cover that cost. You may notice it wasn't the lowest priced truck bid, but it was the lowest priced truck of the ones that fully met the specification that we had out.
Well, and I would note that the lowest bid was essentially $380 lower.
Correct.
So there was not much in the way of real difference between these things. But you indicate that the proposal from Good Pasture Motor Company was more consistent with the specifications that were advertised?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that is your recommendation?
Yes, that's my recommendation, is to allow us to purchase that truck.
So may I ask a question about, you were saying that the Worldwide Equipment, their bid was less, $380, but they did not meet the specifications? What part didn't they meet?
What we specified was a truck where the hydraulics were driven directly off the engine instead of off the transmission, just in the hopes of better maintenance and longevity of the piece of equipment. You'll really notice that Worldwide submitted 2 bids. The first one did comply with our specifications, and that's the one that was $97,553.
They had a good try, didn't they?
Yeah.
Let's leave the second one here.
I have learned that the lowest bid isn't necessarily the best bid.
That's true. Absolutely.
Sometimes that is the case.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the recommendation of Mr. Dew and authorize him and the town manager to purchase the Good Pasture, or the 2015 International 7400 Work Star for $86,380 from Good Pasture Motor Company.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second to authorize our town manager to purchase the truck at the low bid, for $86,380 from Good Pasture Motor Company. Is there any further discussion or comment about this? Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mrs. Deuring.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye. And while you're here, Mr. Dew, we have consideration of bids for asphalt resurfacing work in town. And tell us about that, please, and where you're proposing to resurface and what have you there.
Okay, I will. We also received bids on March 31st for our annual asphalt resurfacing work. Based on past bids and costs, what we were hoping to do, or what we plan on doing this year, is paving Main Street roughly from Hutton Street up to Church Street. And again, based on past costs, we thought that would probably take up our entire budget for this year. As you can see from the bid results, we had 2 bids turned in. My recommendation is to go with the low bid and award the contract to W&L Construction and Paving from Chilhowie. And the bid came in quite competitive, and that means we'll have an opportunity probably to choose some more roads that need paving as well.
And I just have to ask the question, do you do feel like the low bid is the best bid?
I do. If you're familiar or remember, W&L's been doing they have been the only bidder for quite some time. But yeah, I do feel confident in their ability.
And then, of course, now we've got this other person that's jumped in the mix and might be even make it even more competitive next time. Where's Rogers from?
Their main office or corporate headquarters is out of Knoxville, but they also have a presence out toward Lee County and just over the Tennessee line.
Thank you.
And I believe W&L has a good source of gravel these days, too. If I recall correctly.
Where's that from? Is that from the Bristol?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Again, we have a recommendation that we accept, or from our Director of Public Works, Mr. Dew, that we accept the low bid for resurfacing of $204,256.80. And we have a motion regarding this matter.
I move that we accept Mr. Dew's recommendation to go with WL Construction and Paving.
Okay.
Second to the motion.
All right, we have a motion to accept and
To execute.
And I move that we authorize town manager to execute this action.
Second.
all right, and again, we have a motion to accept the low bid and to authorize our town manager to exercise the contract on this matter. Any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, I'll ask our clerk, Ms. Rosenbaum, if she'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deuring.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe.
Aye.
Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. All right, and Let's see, that brings us to a presentation by the Washington County Substance Abuse Coalition relative to their campaign against drinking and driving. Mr. Greg Arnold? No?
You might want to adjust your glasses, Mr.
It's been a struggle to make it all work here tonight, but if you, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm here to give another update on our project. I'm Jordan Whitesides. I'm with the Washington County Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. And our project that we have is the Virginia Strategic Prevention Framework State Incentive Grant. And our goal is to identify and implement evidence-based strategies that will increase the reduction of alcohol-related motor vehicle crashes among 18 to 24-year-olds who reside in Washington County. In phase one, just to refresh your memory, because you probably don't remember the last time I was here, we did a community assessment. We gave out various surveys and did focus groups with the target group, and we also received data from the DMV with the crashes between the age groups, and we found out 21 to 24-year-old males were identified as the #1 offender of these crashes. The majority of the crashes were occurring in the months of July and December between 12 midnight and 4 a.m. And the majority of these crashes were occurring in Monroe and Taylor districts. The reason why these were happening is because of low perception of risk among the young adults. So in phase two, we wrote a strategic plan and came up with 3 evidence-based strategies. Our first strategy, we partnered with law enforcement. We partnered with Washington County Sheriff's Office as well as the Damascus Police Department. And from this grant, we have had 12 additional checkpoints. We had 4 additional in July and 4 in December. And we've also had 1 in each month this year. Our second strategy is that we partner with our local colleges, and we have implementing a program designed to educate college students regarding health risks and other consequences due to binge drinking. Part of that strategy is called eCheck Up to Go. This is given out to the first-year college students, and so far we've had over 200 students take the survey. And the survey asks you about your consumption throughout the week, and it gives a report of your drinking habits. It says estimated BAC per night you go out to drink. It also tells you how much money you spend on alcohol in a year. And it says the caloric count intake of how much calories you drank over the year. And it also compares you to other students across the nation to see if you're above average or below average or where you are. We also, part of the basics program is it stands for Brief Alcohol Screening and Intervention of College Students, and we're currently 10 participants in that program. Our third strategy is our countywide media campaign. Code and Creative in Glade Spring came up with 3 concepts, and so we went to the target age group to choose which one they liked best, and this is what they came up with. It says it's keep the party alive, don't drink and drive. They said that the most effective way to get this out would be in bathroom stall posters and also in the beer caves in the convenience stores. So we just launched this, so hopefully you all will see this out in the county as well as in the town. We also have a QR code on the poster that people with smartphones can scan it, and it takes you to our website and has more information about binge drinking. It has the chart of like your height and weight to see what your BAC level is at that moment. It has some good information on that website. So I'd like to give you all this to hang up.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you care to show it to the audience?
Sure.
And would you prefer that be hung in the bathroom?
Well, if that's what you would all like.
The women's bathrooms.
Yeah, I think that'd be most appropriate. So.
Do you all have any questions?
Thank you. You know, we certainly appreciate being brought up to speed on this and the work that you're doing.
This survey you mentioned, can anybody access that, or?
Well, right now, our local colleges has access to it. You have to pay like a membership.
Gotcha.
And then like the eCheck Up to Go. Yeah. So it's for college students. But I think if you go through the basics program, you have to take it, and that's not just for college students. So
The question I would like to ask is, what were your statistics that, when you ran the extra checkpoints in December, and then the added ones in December, and the one each month? How did your numbers correspond to what you thought they would? Or did they help, do you think?
Well, I think the data for December was that we only had one DUI in that month, but I think prior, I think it's because the word is out. I know on Facebook, I see a lot of things like, oh, there's checkpoints out tonight, stay away. So I think our whole framework is on prevention. We want them to stay off the roads. So if they know about it, then they stay off the roads, then that's a goal for us.
So you could start false rowers on Facebook.
Yes.
Accomplish that. All right.
I just did the QR code on the poster. And so it gives, this is great for kids. It gives your blood alcohol level at your weight.
Very good.
All right.
That might be good for us.
Well, I hope it's not the problem that it was. I hope it's not the problem for you that it might have been once.
It's not, trust me.
All righty.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We'll look forward to further updates. Okay. Next item is consideration of emergency funding request from Holston Mountain Artisans. Is Ms. Price with us here this evening? Don't know that she has to be. We've had a little bit of a discussion about this in the work session. I'll entertain a motion regarding this matter.
Mr. Mayor, if you'd like for me to make,
Certainly,
if you'd like for me to make that motion, I move that we appropriate $3,300 in emergency funding for the Holston Mountain Artisan Center to be taken from the 2013-2014 contingency, council contingency.
All right, very good. And is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, very good. We have a motion and a second to approve an authorization of $3,300 in emergency assistance or emergency mortgage assistance to Holston Mountain Artisans. Funds to be taken from this year's council contingency budget. Any further discussion? I'll ask our clerk to call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Next item is consideration of bylaws for the Tourism Advisory Committee. Mr. Kevin Costello, I believe, is here.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm here to ask your consideration for bylaws for our Tourism Advisory Committee. I put a subcommittee together who helped write them. You should have them in your packet. And then they were vetted by the town attorney, and they were approved by the Tourism Advisory Committee for me to bring in front of you tonight to seek your approval.
Okay. Council, have you got any questions regarding these proposed bylaws or any discussion on this matter?
They were unanimously
Easy for you to say.
All right.
passed by the Tourism Advisory Committee. I think the one, yeah. Might have to quit drinking this tea. I think the one change we made was after some council discussion earlier, they had a little more leeway in their bylaws as far as missed meetings, and I asked them to make those bylaws mirror the other commission bylaws. So instead of, I don't know what the number was, but now in these bylaws it says after three missed meetings, someone will the appointee will ask to step down. Now I think we determined that what that actual motion has to be is that the Tourism Advisory Committee asks the council to withdraw their appointment.
Well, Madam Vice Mayor, it is actually Section 5, and it says any member of the TAC who failed to attend more than 50% of its meetings during a 12-month period may be considered to have resigned. Is that the one you're talking about?
Well, if it is, that's not what we wound up changing in the meeting. The meeting, we changed that to say 3 meetings, not 50%. and we discovered later that if it's a council appointee, only the council can unappoint them. This Tourism Advisory Committee cannot do that. So those, the wording in that part of the bylaws will have to be changed, I think. Is that correct, Kevin? Isn't that what we did in the meeting?
Well, I think as it's written is how it was approved by the advisory committee. It's a bit vague in where it says declare that a vacancy exists, and the process that we used before was we would send a letter to that person asking if they would consider removing themselves or stepping down, resigning from the board, or if they wanted to continue to be on the board, they had to.
I think if you'll check the minutes, we mirrored that to say 3 meetings.
Well, are we in a position to act on this, or is there still controversy?
Doesn't sound like it.
All right.
But then the Planning Commission and the Board of Architectural Review, it says 3, and we discussed, yeah. I think I'm pretty sure we changed that to mirror those.
Go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll look forward to addressing this in March, and we'll all try to be on the same page.
All right.
And while I have you, though, Mr. Costello, I would note that my impression from looking over the meals tax gross revenues for year-to-date suggests things are going much better.
I would say that we're back on par with where we were 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2012 it looks like.
Yeah, and these figures for January for meals, it looks like they might have been better than December.
Well, you know, the numbers come in kind of delayed, so I'd like to think that what we're doing with the Barter Theater with January Jams has given more opportunity for people to come into town, which is considered really an off-season at best for us in January, so I hope that's a reflection from that.
Well, it's nice to see things looking better. We did have sort of a leaner year in that department than, than we wanted, but the economy was pretty tough all over, and it's nice to see things bouncing back, both for the benefit of the local merchants and for our town coffers, and I'm very glad to see that.
Just hope that Mother Nature cooperates with us for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's also nice to see the tourism department be so proactive in what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's really exciting, and it just bodes well on all of y'all, Kevin.
I try to be strategy-based as much as possible.
Strategic.
Your Sunday music.
It was a beautiful day. The music was great. We had more people show up this year than last year, so that's always a good indicator. And we're developing good friendships with the Martha Washington.
Sarah did a good job on the day.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the things I noticed Saturday, the music was filtering down off the hill, down into the parking lot. The parking lot was fairly full Sunday with people ridership on the Creeper Trail.
Right.
And there might be some opportunity possibly just for a poster, some type of signage down there where people would know what was going on, because people were actually stopping, leaning up against their cars to hear the music that down there. So it was real interesting seeing how they were reacting to it.
I think when we are opening up the Finley House to visitation, we'll have a great opportunity to be able to do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
And, I know we touched about the Finley House earlier this evening, but do we have a theory of when that will be open for use as an interpretive center and tourism outpost?
Greg might have a better answer, but I'd say next fiscal year.
Yeah, in the next fiscal year, we have funds built in to do some of the renovations that are necessary, and will be consistent with, I believe Mr. Jackson has a consultant that's been looking at that property, so hopefully sometime in the next fiscal year.
So you're talking about the upcoming fiscal year? So let me ask you a question, Mr. Kelly. If it is going to occur in the next fiscal year and we anticipate to have funds built in, can't we start this prior to it? Can't we start the ball rolling, knowing that there's no payouts or anything going to happen, and start those?
Garrett, do we have the recommendation yet?
Part of the day was supposed to be planned. They'll be in on the 15th.
Are they going to do the design too, or just the recommendation?
No, they'll be doing the design of the interior.
Interior? Okay.
As far as the exhibit space and all that, that's leaked over. He's already working on that part.
Yeah, if we get that before the end of the fiscal year, yeah, we can go ahead and start getting things rolling, and the actual work would take place next fiscal year.
Yeah, because in the hopes of, like most people that are in our tourism-driven base, we kind of look that if you do things if things come to fruition after September, then you pretty much lost a good part of your tourism year. Where that, other than October is of course the month of the best month, And so, you can still squeak out a little bit if everything was done by October, but literally if it comes to fruition in December or January, it's basically a lost cause for this year, so.
Right, it might be April right now, but in terms of tourism, it's June,
It
July.
is, you're right, exactly.
Maybe some kind of kiosk or something like that right now.
Yeah, well, I think, and we've talked about those types of things. I think we can get some racks for brochures and what have you. And the Creeper Trail Club has, I believe, stepped up, and they're very willing to help man part of that. So I think there are things that we can do. Hopefully, this report that Gary's referencing will come forward fairly quickly, and we'll be moving right along.
Yeah, it's obvious we're anxious for this to happen. We're
Me
anxious
too.
for it all to happen.
Oh, sure.
All right, very good. Any further questions while we got this man on the hot seat?
Yes, Mayor Morgan, I want to know if the council's intention with the bylaws is to continue that until the May meeting, is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, any further questions? Thank you very much. We'll see you back here in May.
I think it's my birthday that night.
All right, well, we'll remember that.
Does that mean cake?
And
ice cream.
Mr. Sigmund, our town arborist, I see you making your way to the front here for consideration of our town's annual tree report.
Yes, it's my annual time in front of you guys to give you the State of the Trees address. Floyd's not here, so I'm afraid he can't turn down the microphone. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Ms. Durham, we haven't had the pleasure yet, but I'm very pleased to always come before you guys. I want to talk to you about the busy year that the Tree Commission and the Trees of Abingdon has had here. I apologize, I didn't get my information in the packet. By the time I got that together, everything had been sent out, so I just wanted to make sure you all had it in front of you. The highlights from this past calendar year, always first and foremost, Abingdon continues to be a Tree City USA. I think we lead the way down here in Southwest Virginia. I think we're looked up to in this area down here, and I'm very grateful for the support that you give my department to be able to continue on with this, because I do think it's very much of a feather in Abingdon's cap to be able to have the Tree City USA status. I believe we're in year 12 now, is where we're at right now. And we had the celebration last year at Abingdon Elementary School. It was a great event. We've had tree plantings this past year at the Coons Rec Center and Veterans Memorial Park. One of the big things we did this past year is the initiation of the Abingdon Tree Initiative. We started this knowing that we need to get more trees planted on private property, and this is a program that we've come before you and y'all have heartily endorsed. And we've started with the areas that are south of Interstate 81. We have sent notices out to 386 properties of this program being available to them. We sent it out in October. We have just sent out a little reminder postcard to everybody now that springtime's coming and tree planting season's really getting to start. And as a matter of fact, I've already gotten a number of responses from several property owners down there in that area. They've lost the information we sent them back in October, and I'm going to resend that to them, and we'll continue on with that. This being our first year with this program, of course, we don't know what kind of response we're going to get, but I think this is a program I really think we need to continue with, because, like I said, we want to really have a big impact on Abingdon's urban tree canopy. We've got to address private property.
Would you refresh everybody's memory about that program?
Well, the program in itself, what it is that it's a financial incentive for property owners to purchase and plant trees. They have to sign off on a little 6-point agreement on the back, and for purchase of trees, just the trees themselves, not mulch and equipment and everything, but for the purchase of trees, if they spend up to $200, the town will give them a reimbursement for $25, and if it's over $200, we will reimburse them for $50. And so that is, we had 4 properties take advantage of it back in the fall, and of course now we haven't had any yet this spring, but things are just getting started, and like I said, with the reminder cards just going out, I think we're going to get a pretty decent response. But we don't have any data from years past on this, so we're building that data right now. But it's still, I think, going to be a very, very, very good program. Our Main Streetscape program, the trees going down Main Street, we've got those trees. We've got trees in there right now, but those those are not the permanent trees. Just got word this past week that our permanent trees, the ones we want to have, are in now, and hopefully this coming week we will get those trees in. I know we've had some issues with some of the trees down here on Main Street blowing over in the spring winds, and I'm going to try to come up with something to where we'll be able to anchor those trees down there. We'll come up with some sort of clipping mechanism there on the side of the planters to be able to make sure those trees the new trees we're going to have are going to be able to stay in. But the new trees are going to be a much better fit, even though there's still other types of crabapple trees. Just their forms are going to be good fits for those particular sites there. So that'll be coming on here very, very soon. On Valley Street, back last year, the Tree Commission took a tour of the trees all up and down Valley Street, and we came up with several situations there, several sites where we really felt like several of the trees need to be removed and start replacing it. Remember, it's been since 2001 since the initial municipal tree restoration project there on Valley Street. And so this is kind of, you can almost consider this the next step in the next wave, where additional trees that really just for safety reasons, Valley Street being such a busy street, these trees just had the physical defects that they needed to come out. And so, of course, these trees, once we get everything done, we'll get those sites replanted and get the right tree in the right place, and those will be good trees for many years to come. Something else that's brand new this year, and something I've been heavily involved with, is the Bonnie Appleton Memorial Scholarship Program. Dr. Appleton was very instrumental working with this department here in terms of establishing the compatible tree project up there in Veterans Park up there in the northwest corner. Unfortunately, we lost her a couple of years ago. She passed away after retiring, and so there's a joint collaborative effort between Trees Virginia and the Mid-Atlantic chapter of the International Society of Horticulture. They're working together, going and raising funds to establish a memorial scholarship under Dr. Appleton's name. Our initial goal is to raise $100,000 just to be able to get the initial endowment set. We're looking to raise over $500,000, and this is going to be something national. We're spreading out well beyond Virginia for this, and so we're very active in that. It's something I'm on the committee that's working to raise these funds. I will tell you that the town of Abingdon did make a small contribution to that, which was gratefully received. It was in our budget, and something that the Tree Commission voted on. We did have a certified arborist class this past summer, along with an exam, and although I'm not privy to the final results, I do know we had a very good class, and I just for y'all's information, I have just been recertified as an exam proctor with the ISA, so we'll be able to continue on with these exams here, and I can administer the exams myself. Another thing that we did this year is we did have a pruning class conducted for town of Abingdon employees of Virginia Highlands Community College, and then later on I did the same class up for the town of Marion. And so we've tried to teach these employees the basics and the proper ways to prune trees. I know they've gone in town of Abingdon employees have gone into the cemetery and started working on a number of the trees in there and getting some things taken care of, and I think we're moving along quite well with that, and it's good for them to be able to learn how to do that correctly. I've had several speaking engagements the past year, most notably Washington County Master Gardeners, and I also spoke at the Garden Fair. I'm still on the board of directors with Trees Virginia and MAC ISA, the Mid-Atlantic chapter of the International Society of Horticulture, and I'm also on the tree board there for the town of Marion. And then, of course, I also spend a really good part of my time working with the local residents in terms of any tree concerns they have. Flip over the page, goals and objectives for this coming year. Of course, continue on with the Tree City USA. We always want to do that. The Abingdon Tree Initiative, we will continue on with that. As you guys are probably aware, we've started with the Cumming Street project, where we are beginning to remove the white pines down there across from Shoney's. It's always tough to see these big, large area of trees go like this, but we really felt that this was the proper time to get those trees out of there and begin to re-landscape that area. I'm working with John and with Jamie Chafin in terms of making sure we've got everything right in terms of when we do come back into re-landscape, we've got that all worked out right. I think we're going to have something up there that's going to not only last us a long time, but also something that will be of good benefit to the town, being a major entranceway for the town. Also working with John and Quinn Crockwell on the Academy Drive project. We've got a number of trees slated for in there. One thing that we've got in the works right now, we're trying to have a new emerald ash borer workshop. There's some new equipment that's out on the market now for applications, and I would like to see it used down here, like at the very least as on an experimental basis, just to see how well those things work. And I've been in touch with the manufacturer, and I've been in touch with Paul Revel and Chris Acero, who's the state entomologist, to see if we can maybe have something like what we had here a couple of years ago. And they're very high on that, but Mr. Acero has said that they have now recently found an outbreak of the EAB in Danville, and so he's thinking we may need to have that project there just because it's there upon him. How close is the EAB to us right now? We don't know. I know that when they had those pheromone traps out a year or two ago, there was nothing remotely close to Abingdon, but it's just a matter of time. So we are going to continue to monitor that, and I'm going to be after the state to make sure they keep monitoring as much as possible for our sake, and I want to make sure that we've got the right equipment and the right materials to where we can protect the trees here in town, especially the ones here on public property. We've got a number of new planting sites set up for Main Street, the Coons Rec Center, and Valley Street. As a matter of fact, this coming weekend, Highlands Fellowship will be planting 16 trees over at the Coons Rec Center. We've got those trees on order. I've worked with Mr. Worley on that, and we've got all that set up. I'll be up for hazard tree assessment recertification later this year, and we've got that already taken care of. One new thing here, we've talked about this a little bit in times past, the Virginia Big Tree Program. Just want to make y'all aware, I'm getting very active in that right now, and we do have a new entry in the Virginia Big Tree database. Dr. Gilmer up on Barber Drive. We initially thought that was an American elm. It is not an American elm. It is a slippery elm, the Ulmus rubra. But it is, I've just this past week submitted the information, it is the second largest slippery elm in the state of Virginia.
All right.
So, yes, it's a ways off from the state champion, but it's solidly in second place, I can tell you that.
Well, then you might need to come to my yard and see what kind of tree I have. That huge big, I think it's a maple.
That one in your very funny wood, I have to trim for the power lines, it's a silver maple.
Oh, good.
That's those things. It's a big tree, but those things really get big. So.
Oh, really?
Yes, ma'am. They get to be very large. So, but anyway, I had a very long conversation with Dr. Gilmer, and of course he was filling me in on all the medicinal and everything else, all the qualities of slippery elm. Yes. He's quite knowledgeable about that. And he gave me a lot of stuff, a lot of information that I wasn't quite aware of. So, but anyway, but I just wanted to make y'all aware that we now have two trees on the Virginia Big Tree database.
All right, so we've got the slippery elm, and then
we've got the sugar maple down there going up Mount Com. You'll be driving
is it number one or?
It's number three.
Number three, okay.
Number three. So,
all right.
And of course, I want to continue on with the Dr. Appleton Scholarship. I definitely want to see this become a scholarship that will be of note and something that will catch college students' eyes to where it's something that's really going to be worthy of her efforts to the urban forestry and arboricultural world. We miss her greatly, and continue to be available to town residents. I want to make y'all aware we have our Arbor Day celebration coming up on April 29th at Watauga Elementary School. Been in communications with the principal there. Mr. Mayor, if you remember last time we had it, it rained on us there.
It did.
Yeah, it did. But we got the initial celebrations done inside, and then we waited several days and were able to get the tree planted. So hopefully we won't have that issue this time. But anyway, it's on Tuesday, April 29th at 1 o'clock, and y'all are certainly welcome to come join us in celebrating that. We've got basically the same lineup as we always have in terms of information and tree seedlings to give away to the students. And of course, we'll go out and they want to plant one of the fruitless sweet gum trees there near their playground. So it's called a Happy Days Sweet Gum, and it'll be a fine addition to that. The principal there was very excited about that. So that's everything I've got, guys. In a nutshell, I'm certainly willing to entertain any questions or comments right now.
I'll just make a brief comment. I fairly often am over in the Veterans Park and walk through both the power line compatible trees. I would encourage you to perhaps look at the possibility of doing some sort of identification.
I've got the tags. I've just remembered to get them out there.
Yeah, I can't.
Yes, sir.
Anyway,
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, and I have kept track of our chestnut grove over there, the new American chestnut, and it looks like. Were those chestnut trees inoculated by the staff, or is this just a natural?
It's just a natural process.
Yeah.
The older ones, the BC3s, I believe, if I remember right, very capable of contracting the blight. As a matter of fact, when I was up there with Dr. Hebert, we were getting things set up for the latest wave of them. He was just able to walk through and say, yeah, that one's got it, that one's got it, that one's got it, that one's got it.
Yeah, I think there might be about 2 that will survive from that.
And if that's the case, that's the case. But this latest batch that were planted up there, the BC3 F3s, those are supposed to be the ones that Lord willing, will be the ones that will take off and be the ones. I hope so, too. For my grandchildren's sake, I hope so.
Will there be any others planted up there, or is that kind of it for the moment?
That's where we're at for right now. There haven't been any other further discussions on anything else right now. I have a strange feeling they're probably getting quite the demand for trees. So,
well, we're fortunate to have
I'm very grateful to have what we've got up there.
We have some students from Emory and Henry tonight who are involved in learning about local government, and I would just note that there's a surprising amount of local government that is involved in tree management. And it's one of those things that you don't think about, but in terms of the asset that the trees of our community represent, it's one of our major ones, both in terms of volume and size and value. And it's one of the things that our town, like many others, has over time come to understand what a significant asset it is in other ways as well. Our historic district, for example, where we have gone to great efforts to preserve our old houses, wouldn't be the same without the trees that we have. It really makes a big difference in terms of how we appeal to tourists and so forth, and also to the general quality of life here in our community. It's also one of those things that there's great potential liability with your trees as well. And we try to manage them and cycle our trees on public property because from time to time we'll have a tree fall down or a limb fall down on a car. There'll be some other difficulties, or they'll fall on a power line. And one of Mr. Sigmund's primary activities as our arborist is to try and help get the right tree in the right place. And there's also a strong sense of ownership of the trees in the town, whether they're on your property or not. And it's a touchy thing when you cut a tree. And that's the best way that I can put it without going any further on it, which I don't care to do. But it is one of the things that in local government, trees are a major asset that we have, an important one that needs to be managed on a professional basis. That's all the questions and comments I have. Anybody else?
Well, it was a great segue, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for providing that for me. There are several trees that are going to be cut down on Valley Street.
Yes, sir.
And the Tree Commission doesn't take that lightly, do they?
No, sir.
So what are some of the processes that we go through?
Well, what we did is that we literally went and made a tour of the street, and we saw the trees that just in terms of just by going and making an ocular visit, ones that I had seen prior to, ones I wanted to make sure that the Tree Commission saw, trees had potential concern. Wanted to get the blessings of the Tree Commission, which we were able to do. We even found several other trees that were a concern, and went out and did a much more stringent evaluation on these trees. Some of them we've even done before, and knowing that this tree doesn't have much longer left with us.
So what are some of those tests?
Well, we do evaluations with the major thing is with a piece of equipment called a resistograph, where I can literally use this material or this apparatus that literally allows me to make a very small drill hole into the tree. It goes in 14.5 inches, and it tells me what kind of decay is inside the tree. And what it does is measures the resistance against the tip of the drill bit. And of course, solid wood offers much greater resistance than rotting wood or a cavity in there. And it plots it out on a little graph paper on a one-to-one basis. And so if I pick several sites around the tree based upon the size of the tree, we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on inside the tree right there. And so it tells us right there, at that particular site. So it has been a very invaluable tool. So you also look for dying sections of the tree, decaying wood, are the leaves looking like what they normally should be? Are they starting to get small, light in color, those kinds of things? There's various signs. Put all those together, and it's one of those things when you have to finally say, the risk for this tree really is starting to exceed its value and its importance to us, especially on such a busy street like Valley Street or Cummings Street, and it's time to take the tree out, unfortunately, and just have to start over again. That's what it boils down to.
But there's also times those resistant grafts, even though the tree might not look as good to the tree commission, it might be its savior. And there's times that you come back and said, well, that tree doesn't need to come.
Yes, sir. That resistant graft has really been an invaluable tool for us. Yes, sir.
Very good, sir. Any other questions, comments?
I've gotten a lot of comments. I guess people see those yellow signs on the tree, they start, and I think once you explain what we're trying to do, people understand it.
Yes.
And,
you don't take it lightly. We're certainly not out.
I wish we would have done this 50 years ago, but we just didn't do it. Could have planned along the way, but I mean, we're very.
Well, and it's one of the things. Arboriculture and urban forestry is the newest of the forestry sciences, and it's really, it's still really, I'm still learning greatly, and so it's certainly we're making great strides. And unfortunately, to put the right tree in the right place, sometimes you have to get the wrong tree out of there.
And we'll mention one other thing. He talked about the emerald ash borer, what he referred to as EAB, and I know I'm coming to talk to you guys the next week or so, but there is an insect pest called the emerald ash borer that seems to be coming this way, working its way down from the north, and we have treated to the extent we can our trees with some preventative measure to protect trees on public land and also where the landowners are willing on private property. The thing is that we have some very large ash trees here. They have value to us as they're alive in terms of contributing to the aesthetics of the community and helping to manage stormwater and cooling and all those other things that go along with it. But when they die, some of these things can cost thousands of dollars to take down and clean up when they're in a confined area in the town. And so we're looking down the future in terms of what our costs are going to be and trying to act to preserve this resource. And Mr. Sigmund's been very much on top of this.
We're going to spend money to either try to keep the trees or we're going to spend money to cut them down once the bug comes and kills them.
It would be very expensive.
It would be very expensive, and I'm grateful for the fact that y'all are willing to go to the expense, looking long-term, to try to keep these trees for as long as possible.
Very good.
One more question. It's
Yes,
just, it's a loaded question. If anybody doesn't know, I ask some leading questions because I'm on the tree commission. And I know how difficult. I know how agonizing it can be to cut a tree down and the trees. But the question I do have is in the trees downtown. I know the council, as a council, we were also interested in where the tree wells are. We're trying to find trees to go in because there's literally probably 30 tree wells that were covered up and nothing put in.
I have no idea where those wells are. I really try.
You literally can see them on the sidewalk. Some of them are bricked, and you can see the squares where that they were. So
the big thing there, of course, is and this has been one of my big issues with right there in that section of downtown is that we just don't have a lot of space. There's not a lot of overhead space. And there's not a lot of soil space. And so to have trees of any size there, something's going to have to be done because any tree of any size is just not going to grow there, either in the planters or in one of those tree wells, because I'd say there's just not a whole lot of soil there. So we're going to have to, we'll just have to, this what we've got right now is going to do for the moment, but I think there's other things we can see down the future.
Because what we're getting is retail people that retail businesses that want to come down, they want trees out. And when I was growing up, we had trees out on the streets. Most of them were maples, I think, weren't they, Bob? That And, but, you know.
Sounds like a went by plan.
Yeah, so, yeah. But anyway, but, I'm sure with all the new knowledge, as you put it in horticulture, that there probably are some trees that don't girdle as much and take less water and are more adaptable to.
There's some that survive the urban environment.
Urban setting, yes.
Much better. Yes.
I think the council would love to see that happen, especially in the light of some businesses that didn't relocate because we didn't have enough trees down there.
Well, there are some trees that are what would you call columnar in size. They don't get very wide, and those are the kinds of things we'd have to try to look at as much as possible.
Well,
once again, the thing is also soil space. You need to have a place for the roots to grow. Yes, ma'am.
of course, the report we got from Richard Rose was that our sidewalks weren't wide enough as it is. And there was a big meeting at the incubator with all the tourism people who there was a large discussion about that and how they wanted us to widen the sidewalks. So, there's always going to be somebody that wants.
I think we should get trees in the street program.
All right. Okay, other comments?
And let me say, members of council, if y'all have any questions or any concerns or anything that pops up, please feel free to either shoot me an email or call the office or stop by on Fridays when I'm here. Even if it involves something with that other place that I work at, I'll be more than glad to entertain and discuss what's going on with you, and hopefully things can get worked out. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
We appreciate your efforts.
Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all very much.
Thank you. Very good. Mr. Gary Jackson, can you tell us about consideration of funding for the relocation of the Breckenridge cabin?
Mayor, members of council, the Breckenridge cabin was deeded over to the town last year, I believe, by the Washington County Board of Supervisors. It's been on the property of the Washington County Library for, since the early 80s, I suppose. The plan to remove it from that location and relocate it was drawn up last fall by Quinn Crockwell Landscape Architects, and that would include locating it on the site of the new parking area for the muster grounds. It's taken a while for staff to find someone qualified that could actually do this work, but we did find, two individuals, Mr. Mike Faust of Bristol, Virginia, who can disassemble, relocate, and reassemble with town labor assisting in the pulling of fitters and assisting in the chimney replacement for $35,000. I do believe that's what we have budgeted for that project. And so that's removing it from the current site, taking it to the new site, and reassembling it there. And then Mr. Canjo John from Bristol can do the rechinking with historically accurate materials and methods, as he's done on the sites at Davy Crockett Birthplace, State Historic Park, and for the town of Jonesboro. That'll be an additional $15,000. We could use monies out of the historic preservation funds that we have in the capital improvement plan for that. However, because this is a pretty heavy price, we would have to go through procurement, which just lengthens everything. But staff is recommending, after talking with the Virginia chapter of the Over Mountain Victory Trail Association, that the council use them as the agent to work with the contractors. That way there's no procurement needed. OVTA Virginia chapter can actually hire these individuals with those funds, and staff would still be involved in project management to oversee those funds, but OVTA would be the agent for that. That's staff's recommendation.
And does our town attorney and town manager, that's your recommendation as well?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, it would be my recommendation that we proceed in this fashion. It would be the quickest, cheapest way to move forward. The Over Mountain Victory Trail Association has been very instrumental in this the overall project from the very inception, and so I think with them taking care of the actual relocation of the cabin, they would ensure that it is done so in a historically correct manner, and would be done fairly expeditiously, and then we could likewise provide the town staff as necessary to make this take place as needed.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about this? Or? Okay.
Well, just kind of one, and that is the actual administration of the site would be handled by staff.
Correct.
Not by OBTA.
Right.
OBTA
Right.
basically would just be a conduit that the money could pass through.
Right.
You got a motion?
Oh, yes, well, yeah, let me formulate one here. I would, well, there's something, I better not do this. I better not do this.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, and I want to be clear about what we're doing here.
Is that
Because it sounds to me like what we're doing would be to make some sort of a grant to the Overmountain Victory Trail Association
Yes.
for their use to move and relocate the cabin and so forth, and our staff to provide appropriate administrative assistance and oversight. Is that?
And a good example of how this has been done before, although a little backwards, with Veterans Park, the building of the picnic shelters. It's very similar to that.
Now, is there any issue here, any landmines in terms of, avoiding procurement process? Anything's going to come back to bite us on this?
Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to the town attorney, but again, this is a process that's been used in the past with projects where there are 501c3 groups that are set up to do these types of things. So basically, all the council would be doing would be reallocating part of the money that was allocated for the town staff to do this project to, in effect, allocate the Overmountain Victory Trail to do the project.
My question was to stress the fact that it's a 501c3.
Yes.
And Mr. Humphreys would have to recuse himself because he's the president of the chapter.
President of that chapter, so.
Of the to clarify, that's what we're
Of the
missing.
Virginia chapter.
Of the Virginia chapter of the Overmountain Victory Trail
And
Association.
of course, I'm also chairman of the Muster Ground Committee, so on two fronts, I would rather let someone else make the motion. I'll be glad to.
And I'll point out another situation, since Mr. Wallace is here in the audience. I'm not asking you to participate, but if you recall the medical school funding that was basically treated the same way through DHCD as the town, as the intermediary for the medical school group.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the recommendation of the town manager and the assistant town manager to turn over the process with the town staff's oversight to the Overmountain Victory Trail Association.
Well, I think, we probably need to specify it a little bit further, and now y'all correct me if I'm wrong, and perhaps your motion may need to include a specific amount that we're going to be allocating to the Overmountain Victory Trail Association.
It would be a total of $50,000, be $35,000 for...
In the amount of $50,000, $35,000 to move the cabin, and $15,000
Chimney reconstruction.
for chimney
No,
reconstruction.
for rechinking.
For rechinking.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're getting there, but basically, and is there a second to this motion?
I'll second.
All right, I'm hearing that we have a motion and a second to allocate $50,000 to the Overmountain Victory Trail Association to cover the relocation of the Breckenridge cabin from its present site at the Washington County Public Library to the new muster ground parking lot that is area that is adjacent to the current muster ground site. That organization would serve as the fiscal administrative body for that. Our staff would provide, any oversight and direction as may be required.
And that money would come from the historical preservation funding that is in the current budget.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, I think, I don't care to repeat that, but I think we have the basis of a motion we can understand and live with. Is there any further discussion or comment about this? Okay, Ms. Rosenbaum, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Deering?
Aye.
Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
You're in on this?
Well, I recused myself from making a motion because I was president of that, but I'm not benefiting from it monetarily in any way.
Okay.
So I
you're
don't think
voting,
there'll be a
right?
conflict of interest for
All
that.
right, Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to matters that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone present tonight who wishes to address the council on a specific item that we have not included on our agenda so far?
Mr. Mayor, I have a motion concerning some monies that we allocated in our work session.
Okay.
And I'm going to make this in the form of one motion. I move that on June the 1st, we authorize Mark Godby to contribute out of the council contingency $1,000 to the Washington County Library, $1,000 to the Appalachian Independence Center, $2,000 to Ecumenical Faith in Action, $10,000 to Abingdon Main Street, $10,000 to the Veterans Association, $1,000 to Healthy Family Program, and $5,000 to the Glade Tractor Association.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that this would be effective on June the 1st. Is there a particular reason for that?
Because that's in this year's 2013, 2014 budget, and I don't want it to follow over into the next budget.
Right, but I'm wondering, can it happen sooner, or?
Oh.
Availability of funds?
Yeah.
The funds are available. It can happen at any time. The reason, if there would be a reason to wait, would be in case something were to come up between now and then.
That's fine. Okay, I'm perfectly content with that. Is there a second?
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to allocate the funds as described in Vice Mayor Lowe's motion. Essentially, these are funds that are coming from the council contingencies that we have maintained for 2013. Is there any further discussion?
Well, the one thing I will say is the other reason for the June 1st is because these organizations had asked for increases in their budget for next year.
Right.
And so if we allocate it on June the 1st, that will go into their next year's budget.
As a practical matter, it will.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion, comment? If our clerk will call the roll, please.
Mrs. Jerry? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye, thank you. Okay, we have, now, again, is there anybody here that wishes to address the council? Okay. Seeing no one, I will move on. We have appointments to boards and committees. We have, first of all, appointments to the Board of Building Code Appeals. We have three individuals who are eligible for reappointment to that committee: Mr. John McCormick, Chris Dye, and Nick Griffith. And all are eligible to serve a second term. Is there a motion regarding this matter?
Mr. Mayor, I move we reappoint Mr. John McCormick, Mr. Chris Dye, and Mr. Nick Griffin to the Board of Building Code Appeals.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions, comments? Ms. Rosenbaum?
Mrs. Jerry? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. Also, on the Board of Zoning Appeals, we have the potential reappointment of Matt Bundy, who we're advised is eligible to serve a second term. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we reappoint Matt Bundy for his second term on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to reappoint Mr. Matt Bundy to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Any questions, comments? Ms. Rosenbaum, please.
Mrs. Jerry? Aye. Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Mr. Humphries?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mayor Morgan?
Aye. And Councilmember Humphries has been serving on the Veterans Memorial Park Board. He has requested the appointment of another council member representative to the board. I believe you've been serving on there as sort of a representative for the Tree Commission.
Yes, sir. In their bylaws, it requires a member of the Tree Commission as well as a member of the Town Council. In this case, it just so happens to be I'm a member of the Town Council, but I'm appointed as a member of the Tree Commission. The Tree Commission is, I will not be eligible for, I think, Cecile, if I'm correct, I will not be eligible for a reappointment with the Tree Commission next time, which will take me off of that board anyway. But their charter, their bylaws say that they are supposed to have a council board member also.
But couldn't we leave you on the veterans as a council member and ask somebody from the tree commission to recommend, to appoint somebody that is not a council member from the tree commission?
I would have to, you could. I would just have, what I'd have to do is I have to resign as the tree commission member, and then they would have to find somebody to serve on there from the tree commission, and then you all could appoint me or anyone else that you wanted to.
But you were eligible to continue on there until the 1st of July.
I don't know when. I think I'm 2017 or something like that. 16, maybe 16. I'm a year or two away.
All right.
But I don't. The way that they're, and of course you'll need to, maybe council could help us. The way that it was written up, you didn't have a member. The council member couldn't serve two positions. He couldn't serve council member and tree commission member.
Is that your tree, your veterans bylaws?
Yes, that's yes, veterans bylaws. But what we had in the past is we had Mr. Howard served as tree commission member and Mr. Berry served as council member. Is how it was in the past until I came on, and then Bob rotated off the tree commission. I went on, and Mr. Berry, of course, was on the tree commission until recently he became county administrator.
Okay, Council, do you wish to address this appointment at the present, or at this meeting?
If Rick would want to stay on, I think that's the best way to get it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm glad to stay on as, I'm glad to stay on as tree commission member, but you're still going to need a council member.
Well, we're asking if you would stay on as council member and ask somebody from the tree commission
Oh, to the tree commission.
to
And that
go.
and that's Mr. Sigmund. Mr. Sigmund probably could clarify more on that.
Well, let me just say, we can make sure we bring this up at our next regularly scheduled meeting, and we'll see, we'll entertain who's interested there. I served on the board there for quite a while. We'll see if the standing members, who else is interested. We'll just make sure.
Yeah, report back. Thank you.
That'll work. Now, is action required at this point in time?
No.
Okay, doesn't appear to be. Okay, that brings us to council member reports. Mr. Humphreys.
I have nothing.
Okay, Mrs. Lowe.
Did you attended the Mount Rogers?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I do too.
Okay.
Pardon me. Thank you for reminding me.
All right.
I attended as the second to Kathy on the Mountain Rogers Planning District. I attended their annual meeting. Basically, it was administrative and also educational night. It was a dinner followed by the election of officers, and then the showing of the different grants that the members of the Mount Rogers Planning Commission are actually administering. Some of them are from Abingdon, some of them are from Glade, and several of them are from Glade, Abingdon, and Marion, Smith County. So, anyway, it's very informative. First time I've been there, so I was on the learning curve.
Okay. Mrs. Lowe?
I had a meeting with Dan Smith, who is acting as the chair of the Department of Housing and Community Development. And he expressed a desire, and I know that we probably don't have any applications. I think Ms. Rosenbaum put them, you didn't put them on the website?
No, we decided to wait because the Housing Authority wanted a little bit more time to gather some names and some recommendations.
Okay.
So we were going to delay that until the May council meeting.
Then never mind.
If that's all right.
That is fine with me. I've had a meeting with several of our boards of supervisors over the agreement between the town and the county. As far as the incubator is concerned, I attended the library meeting with Mr. Howard and Mayor Morgan, and attended the Tourism Advisory Committee meeting, and all is well in town.
All right. Mr. Howard?
I'll refer my comments to you on the Dominion Express. After that.
All right, I'll tell you what, Mr. Jackson's losing his voice, but I'll start out, and you fellows can jump in as required. We had a conference call today with the representatives from the Trans-Dominion Express that basically was to get an update on what was happening with this. A couple of things that developed over the last little bit. I'd had a request to have a meeting in the next week or so with President Shrum of Emory and Henry College regarding their interest in seeing passenger rail service restored to southwestern Virginia. We've had an intern from Emory and Henry who's been working with us, done a study of contacting the small colleges and so forth in this region to see what level of interest in ridership would be supported by the students, and apparently it indicates very strong. And it's one of those things that the Trans-Dominion Express coordinated a meeting in Bristol back in October, and everybody was sort of fired up, and then it sort of nothing much happened. And so in anticipation of this meeting coming up, we had a phone conference with the Trans-Dominion Express to sort of find out where things were happening and to perhaps clarify the roles and responsibilities of this particular effort. And what we learned was, first of all, that there is an independent, as we know, the passenger rail service will be extended to Roanoke within the next year and a half to 2 years. There is a group that is actively gearing up in the New River Valley to bring the train service to Christiansburg. The Virginia Tech and Radford are both very interested in making that happen, and they are working with the Trans-Dominion Express to group to get this organized. But they have not had any more contact with folks down in this area. The thought was that Bristol would provide the leadership on this. They seem to be a bit preoccupied these days with other activities and projects. The conclusion that I came to was that if we were going to make anything happen on this down in our part of the world, that we were going to have to take the ball and act and move it forward. The timing seems to be right, but there is really, the folks at Trans-Dominion are willing to provide support and advice and help to organize meetings and so forth, but they're really expecting us, I think, to take the leadership and to put together, a coalition in this part of the world who will actively work towards bringing passenger rail service back. Garrett and company have been in touch with the Planning District Commission on this, and also the Metropolitan Planning Organization that handles transportation plans in this area. I'm going to be in contact with them. In addition to defining what it is that those folks at TDX are doing, we learned that for sure that there is nobody who is really working on having an updated feasibility study done of what would be required to have the service extended down to here. They are going to dig up the old study that was done about 13 years ago when Senator Walker first began this effort, and we're going to look at the what may be required to get this thing, to figure out exactly what needs to happen to make passenger rail a reality down here as far as work that needs to be done on the tracks and documenting potential ridership. Mr. Howard noted that the folks that there has been talk, for example, the mayor of Roanoke has encouraged us to have a bus that would run, say, from here up to Roanoke to catch the train. My own thought is it may be possible to have somebody ride a bus, say, from Christiansburg or Radford or something to catch the train, but considering that it's leaving at about 6:15 in the morning out of Roanoke, it's asking a little much for people in Bristol to get on the train and ride up to Roanoke and do it that way. So their thought at TDX was, as we would all agree, that we needed our own train running down here, and that ultimately would be the strategy that we'd be doing. Mr. Howard had noted that if, for example, that if it is possible to provide some sort of transportation relating to the Roanoke route, possibly out of Wytheville, for example, and moving that area. The District 3 Governmental Cooperative is very much in the transportation business right now. They have vans and buses and so forth that might provide a basis for doing that. But this was a useful meeting that we had. It was clear, that we're the ones that's going to have to make this happen. If it's going to happen, they'll help us out, but we understand, what the reality of it is at this situation. And I would anticipate that there will be a meeting sometime, probably in Abingdon, sometime in the near future, that Mr. Jackson and company will take some steps to coordinate. TDX will come down here, and we can go from there. But I don't need to tell you folks here how important that is for us. Do y'all have any other comments or anything?
I think that's what Roanoke did by establishing bus service between Roanoke and Lynchburg. That did reflect the ridership that was there and very critical. So I think that's something we got to model.
Yeah.
Maybe demonstrate demand.
Yeah.
And they certainly noted that demand was far greater than anything had ever been projected for that, and that they certainly felt like that Roanoke had done well with it. They emphasized the need to talk about how this relates to our town, for example, our own tourism activities. They talked about how when they began to try to bring this to Lynchburg, and it was going to be a reality, Lynchburg invested advertising dollars in, say, the Amtrak on-board newsletter to encourage people to come to Lynchburg to visit. And they invested in putting up posters and advertising materials in the train station in Washington, D.C. to try and encourage people to come, use the train, come down and visit. And it was emphasized to us that tourism promotion, as it relates to getting people to come down here to ride that train, is a critical part of your proposal. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Howard?
That's it.
Okay. All right, we hope to live long enough to see that train down here. Well, not only to see it, but get on that train and ride it out of our train station. We have a train station we can have ready in about 24 hours.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
After you ask Ms. During, could you come back to me just for 1 second?
We might even go to you.
2 seconds.
All right. Mr. Humphries?
No, go to.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The only thing I want to do is, and because a lot of times we thank people, and Greg presents awards out, and I can tell you somebody that I just want to thank, because I know there's a lot of things that are going on and I wouldn't know about them. Our mail comes in and she sends out these notices to come to Grace Healthcare or to come to, to come to William King. And Cecile's had a lot going on in our life. And one of the things she does is she's the mother hen to all us little chicks that's on the council. And thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you for getting those notices out. I will tell you, if it wasn't for that, I would not get to half the things I get to. So
I think instead of chicks, we're probably puppies.
The pups.
Some would say it's squirrels that she's trying to herd, but
Can I add something to that?
yes,
Absolutely.
Our honorable clerk will be installed as state president of the professional association in about a week.
And I would like to.
I don't have enough going on in my life. I thought I should add another layer to everything.
And I'd like to express my thanks to her and her associates, who I think several people are involved in. There is sort of a semi-official mayor's parlor, to use the Abingdon, England terminology for it, which I'm willing to share with my fellow council members as a place where you could actually have a meeting and not have to have the whole boardroom and so forth up there. We've had several times when we've needed some smaller spaces, and thanks to all who have made that possible. And again, I'm happy to share that. Ms. During.
Well, we're in the thanking mode, and I certainly have a lot of people to thank. I was appointed in October. This was a brand new experience for me. Thanks to the overwhelming embracement, and I know that's a weird sentence, but you really have embraced a newcomer and made me feel very welcome and tried your best to bring me up to speed, and I hope I haven't embarrassed you in the meantime, but that goes for all the staff as well as my fellow council members, and I thank you for bearing with me, and I've actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was going to be. So hopefully you'll be stuck with me for a little while longer.
Clearly you had low expectations.
I didn't know what to expect, and I am going to be ordering a navy blazer in the near future.
Yay! All right. And long may you wear it.
I just wonder if the students have any questions, or are you ready to get out of here and get back to Emory?
Well, we all know there is a ball game on tonight.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming, and again, speaking particularly for those of us who went to Emory and, had the opportunity to be there. The one thing that they didn't tell you, and Mr. Wallace, I don't know if he's told you this, but I'm going to re-emphasize it when I come to address your class next week. We all get real excited about presidential elections and the gubernatorial elections and all that kind of stuff, but those of us up here figured out a long time ago that the level of government that has the greatest impact on your daily life is right here in local government. And this is the place where it determines whether you have potholes in your streets, whether you have the police and fire department will come out when you have an emergency, or if you need an ambulance, if they're going to be there to take care of you, whether your children are well educated, whether you have clean water, whether you live in a community that is is prosperous, where you can make a living and raise a family. All those things happen on the local level. And this is the level of government where you can, the great citizen can have the greatest impact and by all means the greatest influence, because all of us here, folks that we represent, are by no means shy about coming and buttonholing us at the grocery store or calling us at home, telling us what's on their mind, and that's a great thing when it works that way. So we've become increasingly aware that at the national level, those folks can't get their act together to get anything done, but we're making some stuff happen here. We're pretty proud about it, and thank you for coming. Thank you for staying awake, and I hope to see you next week.
This is a ball game, Mr. Mayor.
We are adjourned.
Get there.
All right.